Welcome to Literary Lens, or the Literary Lens spin-off? It's still Literary Lens, right? Literary Lens is a series where we're looking at books that have recently been or are going to be adapted for the screen this year, whether it's a series or a film. We're asking the question, should you read before you watch? Do you need to read before you watch? Last week, our first episode covered Harlan Coben's Fool Me Once. The Netflix adaptation of that book was released on January 1st. I have since watched the entire series, and we're not going to judge. We're not going to judge because it's post-holiday sometime in the middle of winter, and we do what we can. And sometimes what we can is melting into a couch, cat on the lap of whoever this might apply to, and watching 8 episodes of a Netflix limited series in one day. And then looking out of one's blackout curtains and realizing it's pitch black outside and wondering where the day went. And realizing it went to Netflix to fool me once. I mean, that could happen to some people. So anyway, we're going to flip the script a little bit today. We're still going to ask, should you read before you watch? But we're also going to ask, if you have read, do you need to watch? The answer to the first episode was maybe. It's a mystery, and so naturally there's a twist. And if you don't want that twist to be ruined for you in the show, you might not want to read first. However, I have since watched the show and can tell you that there are still some surprises to be had. So, let's talk about it. Before we get into the Netflix adaptation, let's do a quick recap of the book. Fool Me Once is a 2016 novel by Harlan Coben that centers around the life of Maya Burkett, or Stern. She is a former special ops pilot who has recently lost her job and now her husband, and is trying to juggle being a new widow and now single mom while also coping with her PTSD from when she was deployed and general trust issues. In an effort to help her alleviate some of those issues, some of those trust issues, kind of give her some peace of mind, Maya's best friend gifts her a nanny cam disguised as a digital photo frame. Maya and her husband Joe's daughter, Lily, spends a lot of time with a nanny, and while Maya trusts the nanny, or rather doesn't not trust the nanny, she doesn't really trust anyone fully around her daughter, which understandable. Unfortunately, this gift does not have the intended effect, because one of the first things she notices that is off about the nanny cam footage is a man in her house while she's at work. And not just any man, but Joe, her dead husband. Now, the nanny cam was installed after Joe died, so it can't be old footage. Maya was there when he died, so he can't secretly be alive and up walking around. So she spirals a little bit. Maya feels a little bit alone because I don't think it's explicitly stated that she's not accepted by her in-laws, but she definitely gets that impression. She's kind of the rough around the edges, came from nothing girl that her husband fell for, and maybe, just maybe, she's never been quite enough. She does say something along these lines to her mother-in-law at one point, but I don't think that feeling is all in her head, but she has some insecurities about that, and she feels kind of alone. Maya has also, within the past year, lost her sister. And so her brother-in-law is dealing with his own shit, and so she doesn't want to lean on him either. So really, she's feeling alone. Her best friend gave her this nanny cam, and she's a little suspicious of her too, but not really. And the only people she really feels like she can rely on are her squad from when she was deployed. Now, she doesn't really trust them either. I mean, she does, but she doesn't tell them everything that's going on. So as Maya tries to understand the mystery of how her dead husband appeared on her nanny cam, she looks for the truth and just uncovers more and more lies. Lies on top of lies on top of lies. Conspiracies on conspiracies. I'm not going to spoil it. There's a big twist at the end, as there is with any mystery novel. Let's talk about the Netflix adaptation. I do have to commend Netflix for staying true to the plot for a lot of things. That's not always the case. You know, sometimes they'll take what they want from a book, throw the rest away, and then make a series that's an amalgamation of whatever they wanted from the source material, and then the creative minds of whoever's writing the Netflix adaptation. And it's not always true to the source material. It's not always respectful of the source material, looking at you, Shadow and Bone. There were moments in Fool Me Once that felt like they literally tore a page out of the book and tossed it on the screen.
You've seen a lot of dead bodies, I suppose, in the military. They bring the body home for the family to see. The loved ones at home, they need that closure. What's your point? I didn't just want to see Joe. I needed to see him. If you don't see a body, you don't quite get it. It's like maybe it didn't happen. Maybe they're still alive. When we lost Andrew at sea, I didn't see his body either.
Yeah, but it got recovered.
But they never showed it to me. Said I was too young. And now I have visions, Maya. Daydreams about him. Sometimes I think he's right there in my house, like he never died at all.
Andrew did.
Yes, but that's why I asked to see Joe's body. Begged, really. I don't care if he looked messed up. I just wanted to see him, to accept that he was really gone.
Since I had watched it so recently, there was kind of a feeling of deja vu. And not that that's a bad thing. I really liked that they stayed so true to the script in the adaptation. And not always. There were some things that were new. There were some things that were different. A lot of it, they were word for word. I thought the performances were done really well, especially Michelle Keegan's portrayal of Maya. I did take issue with some of the aspects of Maya's portrayal in the show, but I think that was a director's choice and not an actor's choice, and I'll explain more later. But overall, I think the performances were done well. They also did a good job at building tension. I felt like there weren't really dull, like maybe in the beginning there were a few dull moments, but for the most part, the show did a good job of getting you hooked, and it also did a good job at leaving it on a cliffhanger, so you were right there ready to press that next episode button. And like, you know, some people might continue to do so for 8 episodes in one day, even if they had already read the book and already knew the plot twist. So I think they did a good job at that, especially for someone who had already read the book. I was still invested. I still kept wanting to watch. I liked that. I liked the tension. Not everybody liked this adaptation, so let's talk about it. At the time of recording this video, the show has pretty mixed reviews. However, I think a lot of the negative reviews that I looked at when I was just perusing the reviews maybe missed something. There were quite a few of them that I saw that were talking about how they felt the plot lost its way. There was confusion about where it was going and how the story was progressing, and when they got to the end, they were confused. And I just think that maybe those people might have missed something. And the reason, and I thought maybe I was projecting something from the book that wasn't actually in the show. So I went back to the show and rewatched some parts. I think there's a point in time in the show where it becomes clear to the audience that the questions Maya's asking and the people she's seeking out are for a very specific answer. I don't think her intentions shift, but I think that the audience's awareness of it shifts, and I think that that becomes very clear. And maybe if you don't see that, go back and rewatch some of it. Now, it's possible that I picked up on this because of watching or reading the book, even though it wasn't not in the show. However, I still don't think they were hiding it. I think it was pretty clear where it was going, and it's possible that that was missed, and maybe it was too subtle. If you liked it until you got toward the end, and then when you realized what was happening, you thought that they didn't set it up for that, go back and watch some of it. I know that rewatching a show once you already know the ending is going to give you a new perspective anyway, but I think you'll see what I'm talking about. I think at the time of recording this video, the Rotten Tomatoes score is 75% and the IMDb score is 7.1. And I think that's fair. It's not groundbreaking. I mean, it's not bad. I think it was good. I think it was entertaining. It's a quick binge for some people. But yeah, I think those ratings are... I might have those mixed up, but I'll put them up here when I'm editing. So, but yeah, I think that's fair. So, what did the Netflix adaptation do differently? What did it change from the book? And what worked and what didn't? Let's talk about it. There were some big changes and there were some minor changes, and some of them mattered and some of them didn't. One big change that did not matter at all but that you would notice if you read the book, was that the book took place in the US and the show is set in the UK. No meaningful change to the plot at all from this change. Everybody has accents, never a bad thing. And yeah, other than that, the story isn't really affected beyond like localization stuff, like the park that they visit is obviously not Central Park. But other than that, doesn't really make a difference. A small change that again doesn't really make a difference, but I personally noticed because in the book Maya explains something and that explanation is missing from the show, and that's the murder weapon. And this isn't a spoiler because literally right in the beginning of the first episode, and also in the trailer, it's shown that Joe dies because he's shot. The model of the gun is different. And again, does not matter, doesn't actually change anything about the plot, really. Maya explains to the detective in the book that the reason she knows that the shooting couldn't have been accidental is because of the model of the gun. She explains something about how it can't just go off, there's steps involved in shooting it, and that it couldn't have been an accident, especially not 3 shots. Again, not a spoiler, very clear very early on. It's a different model in the show, and so that explanation doesn't come up, which again doesn't change anything really about the story. It was just an interesting explanation to me, and also it established Maya as an expert markswoman. Again, doesn't really mean anything, it's just I noticed it because I thought the explanation was interesting. I personally don't know anything about guns, but I thought the explanation was interesting, and so I noticed that it wasn't there in the show because not relevant to the gun that they actually used in the show. Some other minor changes were things like names of different people, like Maya's best friend, the detective, the nanny's brother? Cousin? I don't really know what he is. There's a setting that in the book is a strip club and in the show is an arcade. Again, doesn't really make a difference. They don't really show a lot within that location, so it doesn't really change anything. I liked, there's a part in the book where they say something like, the strip club is a perfect place for clandestine business because nobody's looking at you, because either they're too focused on the performance or they're ashamed and they're not making eye contact with anyone. And I thought that was a really great point. I guess you could make the argument that the same is the case with an arcade, that you're either too focused on the game that you're playing, or, you know, if we're using stereotypes, they're antisocial, so they're not making eye contact, but they didn't make that comparison. I'm just trying to think of reasons why they changed that location. But again, it's not shown as much in the show as it was in the book, so I guess it doesn't really matter. One major change that was positive, in my opinion, was Detective Kearse. Detective Kearse in the book was so bland that if you had asked me after I finished the book, immediately after I finished reading the book, what his name was, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I wouldn't. He was like a character on the sidelines. There was a murder, and so there had to be a murder investigation, and so there had to be an investigator, and that was this guy, Detective Kearse. And that's all that mattered. Every once in a while, he would show up and annoy someone. And that's it. Like, I could not care less about him in the book. He didn't matter. His investigation didn't seem to put any pressure on anyone or push the story forward in any meaningful way. Could have dealt without him. Made a note in my notebook as I was reading that I hope he wasn't going to end up being some kind of surprise love interest for Maya, because he was so boring. In the show, they gave him a personality. They gave him a past and some trauma that he was dealing with. They gave him a future that he was looking forward to. They gave him a purpose other than just being detective on the case. And along with him having a story, we got new characters that we were introduced to. And with those new characters, we got some new twists. And so that made it so even if you had read the book, there was more to learn. There was more to be surprised by in the show. And also, just in general, he was a likable character that I was invested in. I was rooting for him, and there was a connection between him and the overarching story other than him just being the detective that made me more invested in him. And so I liked that, and whoever decided to give Detective Kearse a personality, kudos to you. Really, really liked it. One thing about the show I didn't like were the personality changes to Maya. I know I sort of mentioned this earlier, that I really liked Michelle Keegan's portrayal of Maya. I don't think this was an actor choice. I think it was a director choice. How do I explain this? In the book and in the show, to some extent, Maya is introduced as this no-nonsense, badass, take no shit, speak her mind, military woman who is, career woman. She is a little bit insecure about her maternal instincts. She doesn't feel like she fits in with her husband's family because she's rough around the edges. And she kind of just speaks her mind, and she doesn't seem particularly bothered by people not liking her. Along with this, she, like I said, has some insecurities surrounding the way she is portrayed or is perceived as a mother, and feels not super maternal, like she's not connecting with her daughter in the way she should be, and maybe not as affectionate as she could be, and things like that. In the show, she seems to still have those insecurities, but we see her being so affectionate with her daughter, spending a lot of time with her, reading to her, cuddling with her, playing with her, and her daughter seems super happy to see her every time she comes home. And with the exception of one time where she kind of not snaps at her, but she's like spiraling and trying to ask her daughter if she saw her dad the day before from when she saw him on the camera. And her daughter is like, no. But in the book, her daughter's scared because she's so, freaked out. Because we see Maya and her daughter Lily interacting in such like an affectionate way, two things don't make sense. One, when she feels judged about her mothering skills, usually by her mother-in-law, and she gets defensive, I would be defensive too. I would be like, what, how dare you? But on the other hand, because we see her like this with her daughter, it seems very out of character when she then leaves her daughter with her alcoholic brother-in-law without much warning, after she had just recently given him shit about his drinking. And when she leaves her daughter there, he has a beer in his hand. That seems super out of character for someone who is so affectionate and attentive to her daughter. So then the other thing is the PTSD. So she has PTSD from her time when she was deployed. Things happened. She had to make choices as the captain, and she is haunted by the violence and the death that she witnessed while she was in the middle of a war. In the book, she reflects on how, even though she had to make hard choices, if she had to do it over again, she would make the same choices because she was trying to protect her squad. I don't know what they were called. Unit? Whatever. She was trying to protect them, keep them safe, to save lives. So even if she had to do it again, she would make the same choices. In the show, in what I assume is supposed to be the same scene, she breaks down and she says she just wishes she could go back so she could make different choices, so she could do things differently. And let me just say that I don't condone the choices she made, the death, everything that happened in the war, like none of that. I'm not saying she should have stuck to her guns. No pun intended. and still made those same choices that haunt her. What I am saying is I don't understand why they made these changes to her personality to make her softer, if not just to make her more likable, more palatable to the audience. I just don't think it was necessary, and I think it contradicts. Like, you can't make her softer but still have her make decisions that would have been aligned with the rough around the edges girl. It doesn't make sense. And I also don't think you need your protagonist to be likable for your story to work. And I'm not saying she wasn't likable in the book. I think that she was definitely a little bit more rough around the edges. But we don't need to take sandpaper to her edges and soften her to make her more palatable. I just don't think that was necessary, and I don't think it makes sense in the context of the things that they changed versus the things they didn't change, because some of them contradict themselves. I'm sure I'm missing something. But yeah, that's where we're at. What do you think? Did you watch the show? Did you read the book? Did you do both? If you did both, do you disagree or agree about the changes that I'm talking about? Did I miss something? I probably did. I have ADHD and I miss things all the time, or I forget things, so it's possible. Let me know in the comments if you read it, if you watched it, if you liked it, if you like this video, if you like this format, if you like my hair today. I'm really enjoying this series, and there's another series that I'm going to be working on for this channel soon. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but let's just say it has something to do with fiction. I was going to say like this one, but this one, I don't think all of them are fiction. Most of them. Most of the book adaptations in 2024 are fiction. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you being here. And if you have any comments or questions or concerns or suggestions or criticisms or whatever, leave it in the comments. The next book adaptation that we're doing is The Expatriates by Janice Y.K. Lee. That's being adapted into a series for Amazon that premieres on January 26th called The Expats. So that video, the first video, should be up in a week or so. And then we'll do a follow-up probably again once the show premieres and I inevitably watch it all in one day. Actually, I don't know. I don't remember if Amazon's going to be releasing it all at once or not. Again, thank you for being here, and remember, whether it's on the page or on the screen, there's always more to explore through the literary lens. Do you guys like that? Is that a good slogan? Bye!